We are a digital product studio. We do take some equity stakes where appropriate, but ultimately we typically function as an agency, right?
And then that allows you to build out your customer base, to test out your idea, to validate that it's needed.
A lot of Filipinos have English as a first language and are very, very native.
And that's another thing that you can kind of prove to them is having a recurring revenue model, whether it's through subscription, whether it's through...
Please grab a seat. We were planning to have this event be not seated because there is a little bit more energy when you're standing, and we obviously do not want to bore you to death, so you will just fall asleep here. But obviously seats are there, so if everyone wants to have a seat, please grab yourself something. And yes, we're about to start, but let's give it a couple of more seconds before everyone will get a little bit more quiet. The funny part is we hosted an event here yesterday and everyone was standing. Now everyone wants to have a seat. What the hell? What the hell? This is literally going all like opposite to our plan. Okay, everyone, are we ready to start? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Let's give us all a round of applause since we all came here together. Thank you. Woohoo! And thank you to Google Cloud for hosting us here tonight. Can I please ask everyone to get a little bit quieter? Perfect. So I think we're about to start. I don't know, should I tell my story about the reasons why we are here tonight now or after introduce our guests? But I don't know, let's get the guests first on stage. So we have Cait from Block Dojo, and we have Rob from Old.St Labs. Okay, brand freeze, I'm really sorry for this. But yes, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Let's see if the microphones are working.
Thank you.
So as you can see, like no one is sitting, everyone is standing. Let's see if it's going to create like any difference in terms of the energy in the room, but I hope it will. So do you want to introduce yourself before we go into the depth about MVP?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Cait. I am from Block Dojo. We are a Web3 and AI venture builder based in London. So we basically take founders from idea stage to MVP.
Oh, is this working? Yeah. So I'm Rob. I am a former founder. So I founded a business called 𝗁𝗏𝗋 in 2016. We did okay. We had 100,000 users at the peak. Any of them here? Thank God. But unfortunately, the pandemic wasn't so kind for that. Now I run Old.St Labs. We're a digital product studio. We help founders build their first products. We also help establish businesses as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. So now the reason of why I wanted everyone to come here. And I think I already mentioned this story to a couple of you, so you would understand my pain and the reason why I wanted to have a chat about this. So obviously the topic of our discussion today is where to start with your MVP. And for other people who haven't heard my story, I will just share this, hopefully not in too many details, but I had, I think, pretty bad experience when it comes to MVP development in general. And with one of my previous businesses, I spent about like £50,000. And in terms of the development costs, probably over the course of, I don't know, like 1.5 years, was working with the development team, trusted them quite a bit, and later realized that I was absolutely lied to in terms of the cost of the actual work and the quality of everything that I received as a result. But I'm non-technical founder, and I believe many of you are in the same boat. And obviously today, in order for you to get to quite a few, like to get anywhere, you, especially like everything with like AI, you need to have a product. And if you are not technical, the only option for you immediately is to hire someone, find a CTO, or hire the agency who will actually do this for you. And realistically, if you don't understand what you are looking at, it's very easy to be deceived. It's very easy for the product to take, in terms of the whole time development, much longer than it is, in terms of the cost as well. But also, most importantly, a lot of founders who are first-time founders, and that's pretty much, I consider myself as well one of them, we don't often realize that MVP is not actually the product, and we often end up with overdeveloping something that we built on our own experience without actually validating this with users, and we spend time and money, end up with a product that people actually don't need. And there are quite a few information, there is a lot of information out there, 𝗁𝗏𝗵𝗏𝗀𝗃 have been talking about all of this kind of MVP concept, whatever. But I obviously considered myself too smart for this, because obviously I know much better, and I understand my sector better, the reason why I decided to solve this problem the way it was solved. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of the founders who are the first-time founders, they're pretty much going through the same stuff. And now, going through all of this, spending time and money, I have completely different understanding. And I talk a lot to other founders about this, but I also believe now that everyone kind of needs to go through this experience to actually understand what MVP is. And no one will just take this information by, the way it's presented by 𝗁𝗏𝗵𝗏𝗀𝗃, because everyone here, if they decided to become founders, they're super ambitious people and obviously think they're the smartest people in the room. And so yeah, that's pretty much the reason why I wanted to have you two, because Cait, you specifically specialized on kind of targeting startups at very early stages, and one of the things that you teach founders is what MVP actually is, and you take them through the whole journey. And in Rob's case, you have an experience of being the founder yourself, going through this, and obviously you see a lot of founders who come to you with either this request, or specifically who come to you after they already hired someone before where it was completely messed up, and they're pretty much traumatized people as I am. And they also, they also now have trust issues. So that's pretty much the outline of this conversation, and we will also open this to discussion and questions. But obviously, if anyone wants to interrupt at any point of time, just feel free to raise your hand. And then also, once we're done, before you all leave, we're going to have some pizza served, so we're also going to have some food in addition to drinks. Perfect. Thank you very much. So where do you want to start in terms of the whole MVP concept, Rob or Cait? What do you think MVP actually is, or what you think it actually should be?
Thank you so much. So I think with MVPs, a lot of people tend to overcomplicate it straight off the bat. So when you're thinking about your MVP, you need to think, what is the most basic thing I'm trying to do? And do that. Sometimes people think we have to start with automation, but really you can do things manually to get your first few customers to really prove that it is something that's wanted and needed. This is something, you just mentioned we do with our founders a lot. Identifying whether the problem that they're trying to solve is one that needs solving by a large audience. Sometimes it's just an issue that is impacting you, impacting your circle, but beyond that, it's not really a big issue. And then also whether the problem that you're solving is a solution that someone is going to pay for. And I think that's the big thing that sometimes trips founders up and causes a pivot, which sounds really scary, but it doesn't need to be scary at all. Sometimes it's for the best. And that's kind of what we do at the start. We try and identify target customer, target solution, and then build from there. And I think sometimes people just rush into the solution, and that's maybe where the kind of being taken advantage can come from, because they think, I need to do this, and then it's really not a solution that is viable. I think that's kind of where you need to start. You need to find your target customer, you need to ask them, would you pay for this, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear about your experience, 𝗁𝗏𝗃. I've never actually heard the full story, but well, at least even a snippet of it, because it's all too familiar. I think that a lot of founders fall into the same traps that you found yourself trying to get out of. So the idea, and I think a lot of founders have this sort of psychological kind of trap where they assume that they know the market, they assume that they know the customer, they have whatever it is, the small circle that they've validated the idea with. No one's actually paid for anything. And often these are friends, family that have said, yeah, you know, sounds like a good idea. And that's sort of taken as validation. So when it comes to MVP, I think, sort of leading on from what Kat's saying, Cait, sorry.
It's okay.
Cait. What's most important is doing everything that you possibly can to minimize the risks that you have before you even think about building any software, right? Or anything even looking even a little bit like software, like whether it's Google Sheets in the back end or a WhatsApp group or anything. You know, a startup is a whole host of assumptions that you have made, and if they all prove to be true, then everything's wonderful. But you have to go through the process of looking at what assumptions you can validate and verify before you even think about any products that you're building. I hope that's all pretty much received wisdom in the startup world, but there are a heck of a lot of founders that don't go through the process.
And then, so this one thing that you mentioned about, how do you identify this one thing? And is this different, like depending on your industry and sector?
So I'll try and use an example. So say I wanted to be a skin tech company and I wanted to use AI to look at someone's face and say, okay, you have an oily T-zone, you have a dry patch here, these are the best products I would recommend. Now, from that's a lot of tech, and AI very much not great with faces at the moment and people. But from that, what you can do on the very basic level is use someone's picture, take it, analyze it yourself manually, and use a whole data bank of products and say, okay, this one. You could even use Sheets to say, okay, filter it to dry skin type. These are the best products. Filter it to this, filter it to that. You can do that manually to prove that it's something that's needed. And if you can take someone that's willing to pay you even £1 to test that out, you can then build up your customer base saying, okay, this person then used the products and they got this outcome. So it's kind of about identifying what the very, very basic level that you're trying to offer. So from that, I didn't use any AI. I just used Google Sheets or Microsoft. I identified from just looking at it, and you can build out from that way. That would still be an MVP on the very basic level, and you can kind of grow from there rather than spending an insane amount of money trying to train an AI model or scrape from something, and that could be used that way.
How do you sell this, considering that obviously, like, we are competing with products that already exist and everything is like shiny and working, and you're trying to sell. You want people also to pay for this, even if it's £1 for something that you just do manually, and you still present as, oh, I have this product or service.
It's about starting with community. So one of the founders on our current cohort, she's fabulous. She built out a community through Instagram chats. So she made these huge, I think there's a cap of like 250 people. She had about 6 chats going at once that she used to build out the community. So now she's building her MVP. She can go to them and they're there. They've already seen the value in those group chats and they're willing to pay. So you kind of have to start small, build out your community, identify those customers, and build up a rapport with them. You know, you're starting out small. It is scary having to talk to lots of people. There's a lot of rejection when you're a founder. But once you've got that first one that's gone through, it will get a lot easier, and then you can kind of build from there, from what we've seen.
Yeah, one thing I'd add, you say, how can you compete with the kind of the big boys? One thing that you can do is just focus on your strengths as a startup. And one of the things that you have, or should have, is time to devote to those initial customers. Again, we're kind of speaking about startups in the round, and one thing that I would just massively stress is that every single startup is very, very different. I mean, the whole B2B, B2C divide is huge, and every startup has its own uniquenesses, but you have the ability to give a high level of service with many startups that that some of your larger competitors or big boys in the market might not be able to do, and that giving that, essentially being a consultant can work in a lot of cases where you're, it's a service really, but there's a sort of product that's being built maybe at some point in the background.
My question to you both is that enough for investors though? This is the issue, is that yes, I can cultivate a community, I can test my product with the community, but the findings from the community, is that enough for investors? It sometimes feels with investors that the goalpost is always being moved. And then the other thing is, I just want to ask the crowd here, how many people here are non-technical founders? Non-technical, right? So the issue is, obviously, if you don't have a co-founder, and you touched on the point about how you could do something very minute, but if you're not technical, it's like, what does that look like? Like, how do you decipher what is applicable, and how, and as someone who is in this space, is it enough? Like the example that you just gave with the sheets, is that enough for an investor? Because that's what we're all looking for, right? Investment into our business.
Yeah, so the investor landscape is very different now than it was pre-2020. Background about me as well, before I was with Block Dojo, I worked with an angel network based out of Henley for about 4 years. So I've seen firsthand the appetite for investors changing from back then, where they'd be very happy to invest kind of in a concept and an idea, and now they very much want a pipeline, they want letters of intent, and they kind of want proof that people want to use your product. As frustrating as that is, I think it's, even with just a basic MVP, if you're proving to them, we've got people that want to use this, and just keep building it up, there are investors that are interested in that. And sometimes you may have to even go to the funds that are interested in, investing through SEIS that way. But unfortunately, we are at the beck and call of investors when you're a founder for those things that they want. And having a customer, whether it's £1, whether it's a recurring subscription, they are interested in that. And that's another thing that you can kind of prove to them, is having a recurring revenue model, whether it's through subscription, whether it's through ad contracts, implementing that onto what you've already got now, which may still just be a Google sheet. I mean, I've seen TikTok influencers who are selling their budgeting templates. They're making so much money because it's offering a solution to a need that's there. And I think that is sometimes what the moving of the goalpost can be, is that the solution you're offering is not hitting that need. So it is sometimes a case of trial and error, identifying that niche to make sure that you're getting those customers. But it's just kind of working at it to find that niche and keep going. That's what I would say, is that getting those customers signed on, even if it's at a low cost, even at a discounted rate at the start, I feel like that's kind of the best way to go about it, from my opinion.
Yeah, I feel your pain though. Like it is brutal trying to get investment at the early stage. I think the one thing that I would say is the very, very first round. So the kind of stage we're talking about, where you don't really have, you don't have a product yet, let alone any revenue, really. Typically, that's the 3 Fs round, the friends, fools, and family round. Hopefully, not too many fools, but the sort of standard angel investment route is possibly a stage beyond maybe the one that we're talking about. I mean, friends and family that's an incredibly difficult hurdle for a lot of people anyway. I mean, it helps to have a few friends or family with, some thousands of pounds to spare, and so it's a brutal place to be in. But I think that generally, if you adopt the mindset that what every investor up to sort of Series A and beyond is looking for is like the proof that you understand that what you're trying to do is learn about the market, learn about your customer, and minimize the risks that you can minimize, then it puts you in a good position. Other than that, it's just a ton of networking.
I just wanted to add to that, actually, because one thing that we have noticed very much is that one of the key reasons investor expectations have changed is because it is now so easy to build very cheaply, or in fact free of charge, an amazing website, basic tech, do all the market research. So there's now an expectation. I mean, we don't even mention now that we use AI in our product because it's just expected. So I think it's not so much, you know, that I think it's just the tech landscape that's changing, which is making the investors change as well, because they're just expecting you to be on top of what's available now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And actually, we mentioned kind of Google Sheets and things, that there are low-code platforms that are getting easier and easier. So like Bubble and Webflow and etc. There's a massive list, but it is possible, and it's not as scary as it sounds. I mean, if you want to sort of dive headlong into Python or whatever, then that can be quite scary. But some of the low-code platforms, you know, they're learnable.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say Bubble especially is what a lot of our founders use, and it is a steep learning curve, but once you've got that, it's pretty easy to fiddle about with it and kind of present something that is very, very, very professional looking.
I was just going to say, I think what a number of us would be looking for is a list of those, because I've heard of known code, but which are the best to use, why, examples, templates. I mean, you're absolutely right, these things are getting easier, but if you don't know what you don't know, then where do you get that information? Because it doesn't seem to be that easy to find online.
No, that's a good point. Maybe one for us to compile together.
Actually, question
Bubble's
on
a
this.
good place to start.
Yeah.
So, non-code solution, freelance.com, technical co-founder, or the agency that can do all the development. So 4 options. Which one founders should be going after, and what are the pros and cons of each?
Say them again.
So
Technical
non-code,
co-founder,
like,
low code.
and then freelance.com, where you can
Freelance,
just like,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. It depends. It depends on the startup. It depends on the stage of the startup. So we are a digital product studio. We do take some equity stakes where appropriate, but ultimately we typically function as an agency, right? I think, without wishing to do myself out of too much business, we're probably the last port of call. Certainly, technical co-founder for me, if you can get the right technical co-founder and they really, really buy into things that we haven't spoken about, like the vision, the mission, you as a person, that for me is the very first one. Freelance.com, you know, you could be lucky. There are risks around getting freelancers.
What are the risks?
There's not much recourse if they disappear. You don't necessarily know what they're building in. If they're doing on something like Bubble, and you might be able to come up the learning curve with them. If they're using one of these low-code platforms, then that can mitigate some of that risk. But if they're just diving headlong into code and you are a non-technical founder and they disappear and you don't know what they've done, and it's quite difficult sometimes to find someone to unpick that, because coders typically don't like dealing with other people's code for some good reasons and some not so good reasons. So I think there's a serious risk about that. So whether it's agency or kind of freelancer, I think would depend. I mean, if you find a freelancer that you really trust and you know that they're there, then maybe that's a route to go down. And low-code platform I'd sort of put pretty near the top. If you can't find a technical co-founder, then and you can get your head around some of these low-code platforms, that would be
What
my
are
rough
the
order.
downsides for the low-code? Maybe like long-term?
Honestly, I don't think there's much of a downside in the low-code at MVP stage. If you're going to scale and you're going to think about what the platform looks like with 10,000 users and features that might be pretty damn bespoke, then after a while you might find that you're bumping up against limits with low code. But those are very nice problems to have. And if you get to that stage, you should be able to raise a good amount of investment. You should be able to get pretty far along the investment ladder with a low code product, I would say.
How far do you think you can go on just low code? Until, I don't know, like, can you get to like Series A with this, or it depends?
This one's for you.
I would say it depends again.
Depends.
It's tough because every single MVP, every single startup is offering such a different, you'd hope, service and proposition. So I would add to the technical co-founder as well, investors love teams. Like every investor I speak to, the number one thing they look at is the team, the founder market fit. If you've got, it's the hit by bus theory, right? If you're hit by bus the next day, who's picking up the slack? If you've got a technical co-founder, that will bode well for investment. In terms of how far you can go, you've kind of just got to test it. I mean, I've seen people that have maybe gone to seed and they've been on low code / no code tools. The problem with that is we are seeing that funders like Innovate UK won't offer grants for Bubble or things on those platforms. That's what our investment director said to us. So if you're trying to expand beyond that and look for some non-dilution funding, it might be tough on those tools, and that's where you might need to expand beyond that. But in terms of building up your customer base, actually expanding your products, you could go pretty far on those tools. So that would probably be a downside that I would say. But again, nice problem to have if you're looking for grant funding for a big project.
And what's the logic behind Innovate UK? I'm just wondering.
I have absolutely no idea. It would be a question for
Just
them,
not
I'm afraid.
building on someone else's innovation, your innovation is not an innovation?
It's all, grant funding is a mystic place, as I'm sure people in this room may know. So yeah, it may just be that it's not exactly your written code that may be the thing. You'll have to ask Innovate UK.
No,
there you go. It's another panel for you with Innovate
thank you
UK.
very much. So let's say Google Sheets not enough, WhatsApp group not enough. If you do want to actually go and build something, how much should it cost you at the early stage? Or how much you should be even like look at? Because I don't know, like let's say I'm talking to you, I know like this is what I want to do, and it was like, what's the price? You'd be like, it all depends. And then it's all of this like depends. It's obviously it doesn't stop, but obviously like I think where we are would be great just to understand at least, I don't know, like a ballpark, to understand if, let's say, in my case, when I'm working with someone, if someone is actually trying to rip me off, or it's kind of like a normal market rates.
Yeah, what we tend to do, I will answer the question, but what we tend to do is take people through a bit of a process, right? So we'll sort of listen to what the concept is, and if incidentally, if they can build on low code, or it's better built on low code, then that's usually the message. But if if it is appropriate that they actually do start to build a product and they've sort of passed the various milestones, then we'll kind of come up with an initial real ballpark and basically say, we don't really know what you're building yet, but if you build this, it would cost you roughly that. Then we'll work with them to really understand what that is and whittle it down. And then we'll just go through a sort of a Moscow prioritization process. So what must you have, should you have, could you have, or do you want? And be as ruthless as possible with them to try to whittle that down to something that's manageable, especially if the budgets are small. You could, so to give ballpark figures, again, this is sort of high code and everything. If it's a web app, you'd want to whittle that down to, I'd say, sort of 15-ish K plus or minus, and that should include designs and so on. That's quite a small product, to be honest, but you should be building a small product.
Does it depend on the location of these developers? Like, if there is still kind of like discrepancy in terms of the pricing, I don't know, like, I know like Russia, Ukraine used to have like good coders, good pricing. Now it's all kind of like messed up. But in terms of like other locations, or it's relatively now the whole world is like within the same ballpark of prices, unless it's UK.
Yeah, so our developers are in the Philippines. For us, that's a kind of a good combination of, yes, it's a low-cost country, and it sort of needs to be at this stage, but also there's typically a level of not just English, but a lot of Filipinos have English as a first language, and are very, very native speakers, and that ability to communicate is essential. I think, to answer your question about kind of how it is around the world, I think that it's the low-cost countries seem to be broadly leveling out a bit. I think that sort of the near-shoring to sort of Near Eastern Europe, like Poland, is probably still, whatever it is, like 30% cheaper than somewhere like the Philippines. India tends to be typically be the cheapest, but again, I hate to say this, but price isn't everything with this. You will, there's the old adage that you buy cheap, you buy twice, and in startup world, buying twice is incredibly damaging and expensive, as you know from personal experience, Vasily. So yeah, you do need to have a team that you can communicate with and you trust to be able to understand more than just the kind of feature list that you give them, but your actual product.
How do you know what you're actually buying if you're not technical?
It's difficult because ultimately, again, if you're looking at a product written in Python, JavaScript, whatever, it is sort of Chinese, or it's just a completely different language to a non-technical person. So there is a black box there, which is it's always going to be a difficult thing to deal with. One thing that people can do, which I would recommend, is getting a bit of help. So there are people like fractional CTOs, one or two in this audience, I know, who can be your guide and assist you and check the code. Ultimately, it's going to come down to a level of trust there somewhere, though. Like if there's a fractional CTO in London who can be your sort of guide you through the process and make sure that whoever it is building the right thing, I think that's a massive, massive step up. You've still got to trust them, obviously, and trust their judgments. But there's always going to be a little bit of a trust gap unless Cait has a way of bridging it.
Bridging it is tough. I think it is meeting someone, and I think it goes back to your earlier point. It's about the strategy, it's about the vision, the mission. If they don't align with you on those things, it doesn't matter what they say, you're not going to 100% trust them. It doesn't also even matter if they're introduced by mutual, as that person was introduced to you by someone that you know. So I think it is a tiring job being a founder, but you're going to have to go to a lot of networking events, just meet people, speak to people. You know, this community feels really big, but it is quite small. And if someone's had a bad experience with someone, then you will know about it. So I think it's just about listening and meeting people and connecting that way. And yeah, fractional CTOs are kind of the best bet. You've also got some dev agencies. So one of our portfolio companies from a few cohorts ago, Rafa, she has the 𝗁𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗃, which is kind of building up developers. So you can, it's like with a hair salon when you've got the trainees, you know, you can pay £6 for a haircut or you can pay £60 with a stylist. That's kind of the offering. And there are lots of kind of agencies out there that are similar to that. So it is lower cost, but again, it is about finding that trust with them, looking at their previous work. That's why there's sometimes issues with websites like Freelancer, Fiverr, Upwork. you don't necessarily know that that work is 100% what has been done. So yeah, it is all about trust, which is frustrating because sometimes you get gut instinct, sometimes you don't. But yeah, I'm yet to find the bridge.
And sometimes you waste £50,000.
Yes.
So last question from me before we also ask some questions from the audience. So product versus features. Because I know a lot, again, my case, like literally, like my case, we spent probably, like about a year building things, mostly focused on just features, because I thought that was important in order for my product to be better than whatever. While our not competitor anymore, like Luma, everyone used Luma when you registered today. We pretty much started at the same time, but they launched their product literally within like 3-4 months. And we launched our product literally doing the same stuff for the wellness sector, maybe, I don't know, like 6 months later. And obviously, by the time we launched ours, we then just kept constantly like developing just to catch up with what they did. And now I know the mistakes, but how founders can avoid doing this mistake and just like without constantly just adding this like nice features, but just go to the market and just validate this, and if it doesn't work, just pivot, or it does, just make it better.
Yeah, I mean, you said it there. I spoke to our head of design and asked her what her advice would be to founders. And she said, just iterate. Get something to the market, see how the customers respond to it, look at that data. You know, that's the most important thing. How are they interacting with your product? How are they, you know, is they leaving straight away? Are they spending an extra bit of time on a certain area? Take that information and build on that. You know, it's better to have a foot in the door and kind of go from there than be knocking on the doorstep, waiting to be let in. Like, force yourself in and go from there. That was her advice.
Sorry? So we had the platform for corporate wellness to list like corporate wellness. But initially it was the platform to list yoga classes, meditation, everything online, kind of like post-COVID when no one was able to go anywhere. And that's what pretty much how Luma started. It was all just for the... Yeah, exactly. And that's why, you know, like they launched this like 6 months before, and it was a very good product. And yeah, while we were like trying to make it like nicer and better, and by the time we did this, it was kind of like a little bit too late.
Yeah, timing is everything, I would say.
Just to echo everything that was said, I mean, I think this mantra keeps on getting repeated, and yet every single founder will still make this mistake. You have to whittle a number of features down. I did it as well, Vasily, and when I started City Munch in 2016, 2017, way too many features, some of which were completely useless and never used. It's just a waste of time, a waste of money, and it means that you don't get to market as quickly as you could. So yeah, I'm just basically echoing that. The other thing to say is one thing I think is really, really useful once you've got your product out there is you can potentially find those early adopters that do start to use your product, and it might just literally be a few people, a handful, 5. If it's something where, you know, if they're in Brazil, then this might not be so easy, but if they're in London, take them out for coffee. This is what I used to do anyway. You know, GDPR permitting and everything, but this is back in the day. I just, you know, I just email them directly, and especially if anyone complains about your products, those are the most useful people in the world. They care enough to write in and complain. They're gold dust. Write back, take them for coffee, understand everything about them, and they will go, because they will be amazed that the founder has just emailed them.
I saw a picture on TikTok about like last year, and I found it so funny. So it was picture on the left was like rocket, like all this like things shiny, all kind of like cool 3D whatever, and it says MVP of the first time founder. And then there is a second picture of this rocket, pretty much drawn by a child, like very basic 2D, and then it's MVP of the second time founder. And that I just found it so funny, because that's exactly how, you know, like I see these things now. Anyway, let's go to some questions. We have some questions Okay, let's start here.
Hello guys, I work with startups as well, and my point is around low code, no code kind of platforms. So in my experience, I think we should answer this question from the point of view, how much chance you give yourself to a new app on your phone? Once? And if you don't like it, what happens to it? Right, so you got one chance in the hands of your customer to make that impression, so they want to come and use it. And that's the basis of whether you should go low code, no code in your concept. So generally, what I've seen is internal automation, that's all fine, doesn't matter, it's all you and your team. But when it comes to the customer, give them the best shot. That's what I would say. Any thoughts? Thank you.
Thank you very much for advice. Thank you very much. You have some questions here.
Thank you. I was curious, as a software engineer, I can just say building the MVP is very, very easy. If you're starting something like OpenAI, sure, it's going to be quite expensive, but building the MVP is fairly straightforward. And the challenge, I think, for the most part, is how do you find those users? How do you actually build the community, right? Like you were talking about. So I was wondering if Rare Founders or Old.St Labs or Block Dojo, do you have some sort of I guess speed dating for co-founders? So like me with a technical background, if I'm targeting B2B, I want to kind of learn more about someone's experience in sales, someone's experience in, let's say, SA, something even like very, someone wouldn't think of so much these days, HR, for example. Is there some sort of platform where these co-founders can meet and be like, all right, I'm a technical background, I like your idea, I want to solve this problem, so that way you can meet and kind of match them?
I think, Vasily, you did a co-founder meetup.
We literally had it here 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So yeah, we used 𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏 kind of like algorithm, or like try to replicate it in real life, and it was fun. Now we just need to change a few things. Definitely we'll do it again. I don't know. It was just an experiment and it went well, but if there is anything else, please share.
Just keep networking, keep talking to people. Tech Startups in the Pub is something that we run on every third Friday of the month. Come along, it's great. Have some drinks and chat to people. I don't know of any tech platform though.
The only thing I would say is the 𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗀 co-founder platform. You can search for co-founders on there. We're trying to do some more co-founder meetup events type things for our founders. We're always looking for them. But yeah, it's just networking. Something else that you can do is go onto like Luma or Meetup and find the communities that kind of resonate with your idea, and then just go to those events. That might be a good way to meet people. Also, if you're looking for someone in HR, go to HR events. You don't necessarily have to be in the HR space or the sales space to do that. So kind of look for sector-specific events, and you might be able to find someone a bit more easily.
I do have one question, but just there was a point around non-technical co-founders. I would just advise non-technical co-founders, if you're working with an agency or any sort of technology development partner, you have the right to challenge them really hard to explain what they're developing to you in layman's terms. They shouldn't be pulling the wool over your eyes. They should be really clear in what they're explaining in terms of what they're developing, and also showing it to you. Make it about the outcome, not about the code itself, because of course I'm not that technical. I don't know Python either, but it's about the outcome. What does the MVP do? How does it function? And that's where you should really push them. I do have a question. What is like one of the biggest hurdles you've seen for MVP development? From your experience, you guys both have a lot of experience in MVP development. Like one thing that founders have made like as the biggest mistake when it comes to MVP. Just like 30 seconds, really quick. Curious to see what you say.
The biggest mistake that sort of gets made again and again. The first thing that comes to mind is what I just said a moment ago. To be honest, it's just spending too much on dev agencies and overspecking MVP. Beginning to sound a bit like a broken record saying that again and again though. Anything else?
I would say again the over features. We saw it with our founders in this cohort. They built their MVP. It was perfect. It was ready to go out to customers, and then they were like, "Oh, well, let me just add on this extra bit. Let me just add on this extra bit," and we really had to rein them back in. So I think it's kind of the feature creep, but also it's not getting it out to a customer quick enough. Get them testing it like Rob said, if they hate it, then that's something that you can kind of build on and work on. And it's kind of like that scene from the US Office, if you remember it, when Dwight and Jim go in to try and win a customer back, and they are on hold for customer service, and they're there straight away answering. That's kind of what a founder has that they can offer. I'm here, I'm listening, I can change it for you like that. And that will kind of build up your trust in the community and help you expand your MVP a lot quicker.
One other thing that just came to mind, sorry, you can put something other than a tech product in front of people. So this is the whole designs thing, the clickable prototype, even just something that you've drawn on a page can often be better and can at least click with people more than just you explaining your idea. So if you kind of, if you're in a room with someone who might be your target customer, B2B customer, whoever, and then and you've at least got something there that you've drawn in crayons, whatever it is, it might that can get them a sort of it can bring their level of understanding up quicker than just sort of explaining it to them. So that there are kind of other intermediate steps. Again, depends massively on the startup, but there are other intermediary steps that you can take.
We have last question here.
Sorry, mine is not a question. So with regards to your question about technical platforms for co-founders, so Coffee Space now exists. I think it was launched in August or something by a couple of UCL students. So that's something. I literally went on it today and I was like, oh, it's basically the YC co-funding, their co-matching platform that they've ripped off and basically built a thing. Literally, I'm just saying. Jotform is one of the things that you guys have mentioned. I know you mentioned Bubble and there's Flutterflow and various others. But you know what? Most of the time when you're actually trying to build something, we go back to what Cait said when you say, what's the most basic thing you need to do? Actually, you can spend half an hour creating something on Jotform that will do the thing you need to do. You end up with an app on your phone, and you can basically go around testing that. And with regards to what you said about designs, with my last startup, that's literally what I did. I designed and I went around to a whole bunch of events and then spoke to my end customers. And the moment I got to the point where all the banks kept asking me the same question, when are you actually going to do a white label version? I knew I had a thing that was worth actually, launching without actually building anything.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. I think it's time for pizza, and let's give a round of applause to our beautiful guests. Thank you. So I hope it was useful. I hope it wasn't too scary, especially my traumatizing experience. And yes, so the pizza is waiting for you outside, and we're here until 8:45 for some networking. Thank you very much. Thank you.